I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but in the time between the last meeting and this meeting, I had a personal epiphany and decided that we should not allow medical marijuana in the residential district. And so I've written up a bylaw that eliminates that. It's just a slight variation. It just eliminates residential, but it also changes the setback on one of the others. And let me just explain my thought process. As we started this, we were really thinking big picture, Bolton, what would work for Bolton, realizing that we need to allow it somewhere. We cannot create a set of rules that just kind of make it so that it cannot exist anywhere. And we went through the thought process of bigger parcels in town are actually more likely to be zoned residential than commercial, or business. Truly we have business, limited business, industrial, and recreational business, which is the golf courses. The recreational, we decided we didn't think that was appropriate, and then so that leaves you with limited business, and industrial, and those are a very small part of the total footprint of town, and there's not any really large parcels. So we thought about farms and whether or not that would make sense as a more isolated area away from other people and such, and kind of headed down that path, with best intentions. But as I continue to review other towns' bylaws and thought this through a little bit more intently and thought about, frankly, presenting to town meeting, it occurred to me that the logical question for anyone would be, why would you allow it in residential, as Eric has stated before? And I don't think a hypothetical, well, maybe there might be a reason to do that in the future, is a good enough reason to open Pandora's box, so to speak, today and going forward with this bylaw. Because once we put this bylaw forward and it passes, and it says it's allowed in residential, then it is, I don't think we know enough about it. I don't think we have enough information to make that leap. And the fact that no one else has done it, and that every other town is restricting it to either business zones or industrial zones or newly created zones like Concord did, really gave me pause to think that this might not make sense to go forward at this point in time with that. So, like I said, it was for lack of a better word, an epiphany for me that I finally decided I personally don't support allowing it in residential right now. I still think we should have the 500-foot setback to residential, because that would protect somebody within 500 feet of a business zone. And obviously somebody could argue a different length, but I think that's a reasonable distance. And we had previously proposed the 3,000-foot setback for schools and all the other places that we listed that were areas where children congregate. In this new version, I've cut it back to 1,500 square feet. And the reason is, again, that we have to allow it somewhere.
So we have to allow it in at least 2 locations. Is that our minimum?
I'm not a lawyer.
That would seem to go with the argument of anti-spot zoning.
I think if you only allow it in one location, you could easily make the argument of spot zoning. I'm not saying that wouldn't hold up. I'm not comfortable with doing that. I want to allow it in more than one location. So by eliminating residential, maintaining the 500-foot setback to residential, and changing the setback to our list of places where people congregate, this is a big map of town, and I've drawn the business, limited business and industrial zones. Obviously, this business zone, which is right next to the high school, is completely eliminated on this scale. I've scaled everything. There's 3,000 feet, there's 1,500 feet. And it's, from any portion of the building, so that entire zone is excluded. Okay? We also have the soccer fields over here, so literally, and we've excluded the limited business, so that whole side of town has become excluded. We now flip to the east side of town.
The whole, all the way to the Lancaster line is excluded with the 3,000 foot?
1,500.
It is with the no residential and 1,500. Because the only business zone on this side is this area of business.
Okay, everything
at,
else is residential.
So we're excluding limited business.
Because there are a few, well, like Bolton Orchards.
Sure, but they're a non-conforming business within a
Okay,
residential
so
zone.
I didn't
So what I'm
realize. Okay.
proposing is we put an X in the residential zone.
Yep.
No, it would not be allowed in any residential zone. So now you go to, and not allowed in limited business, as we had previously said. So now you have business, limited business and industrial on the east side of town. That's the only one. That one is excluded. And now if you get to this side of town, I think that this allows for it in 4 different locations at 1,500 feet. And we're gonna go from the schools, okay? It does take some of this, it does rule out the business zone where the country
Salt
covered
box.
is. I mean, the salt box, okay? So that's ruled out. And some of the limited business south of 117, but it leaves the limited business at 495 north, and this portion closer to. And the other thing I didn't do here is there is actually, this is an issue to be discussed. There's right here, lacrosse field. If that's included as a place for children congregating, then it actually eliminates most of this. It does not eliminate the business zone east of 495.
Are those 3 houses, are these 3 houses, any of them residential, or are they all?
Those are all zone business.
Okay.
But,
That's Breeze's old building?
yeah, so it would.
Is this owned by the town, this soccer field?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would allow it in this business property, it would allow it in the Skinner property, and it would allow it in the industrial property on the far east end of town at 117. And if we go to our 500-foot setback from nearest residential, it does allow it both sides of 117 here. I know, David, that's been an issue
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
I personally think this is industrial zone. It's a 500-foot setback. You know, it's.
Well, that's pretty close to 500 feet.
It is.
Now,
And the point is not, the way these are done,
but that
it's
isn't,
from
that isn't good
building,
enough.
it's from building to building.
Yeah, closest point to closest point.
So it may be that this building doesn't work, but it may be another piece of that property does work, is all I'm saying. I don't want to completely exclude property that we already have zoned for business and industrial. I think we need to have multiple locations that are allowed. I personally think close to 495 is actually a good location. I think this is probably a good location, and this limits it quite a bit more than what we had originally talked about. That's where I've come around to. We need to vote as a board whether we want to go with, and I think to make it simple, we've got 2 options before us. One is what we had originally come up with as of the last meeting, which is 3,000-foot setback from any place where children congregate, 500-foot setback from any residence, but allowing it in residence. The other is my new proposal, which is to eliminate residential and also reduce the setback to 1,500 square feet on places where children congregate.
So here at Skinner, the 500 feet, it doesn't look like that's really.
You know, and I'm not going to pretend this is exact, but it's. I think this house is about 600 feet away,
Okay.
so I think it works. Same thing here. I think it's about 550.
So
you know?
it's 3 spots that could go, well, really, I mean, 4.
What is this, the common driveway that comes back up?
Yeah, that's
Great Brook.
Yeah, okay.
Great Brook Estates.
so.
But Doug, you mentioned in an email, you mentioned in an email about how, the first round of medical marijuana facilities have been permitted. Can you just go over those statistics?
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to note, and I'm gonna, assuming that I'd be speaking to this at town meeting, I will open with this, which is that, the first 20 locations statewide have been identified as being approved by the state. I think there's some machinations going on with a few of them where there were some discrepancies and some...
20 of 35 total.
Correct, that were allowed at this point in time. And they
So
were
it was like
all...
the candidates were right, the towns were right, and
They were all dispensaries, weren't they?
Not necessarily.
Sterling is gonna get a grow
But
facility.
it does appear that there'll be more dispensaries than grow facilities, and they will actually ship it to grow facilities. But they did say that one of the primary criteria was local support. And there were no instances that I'm aware of where one was permitted where there was a strong
Town
opposition to it. So I am still of the opinion that this is not going to happen to Bolton if we don't want it, and that short of an uprising of local support for this, I think we will self-deselect, and people will not try to come here because they'll realize that it's just not a climate that's open to it, because frankly, we're very selective in whatever we want to see happen in Bolton. And I'm of that opinion myself. I mean, I don't see the benefit to a community to having one of these things. So I'm not concerned that one's going to be forced on us. But I realize that other people may say, well, it still could happen. And that's why we started down this path of trying to come up with some reasonable local regulations that would give us the ability to have the oversight that we need to have in Bolton to make sure that whatever happens is appropriate. And again, on the issue of residential, I suddenly had the thought that if we allow it, it could be perceived as we are embracing it and encouraging it, and where no other town has said they'd allow it in residential, Bolton has, so let's go look at Bolton. So that may be an incentive for people to consider Bolton, and I don't think that's what we intended to do. And I don't think at this point in time there's any reason to take that step. We may at a later time, on further, inspection of the whole entire process, come to the conclusion that there is a reason to do it in a remote area of town in a big parcel of land. But I don't think we know that information today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the way I think about it is that these are theoretical sites, that they're, I think across many different, interest groups in Bolton, there is opposition. So I think among members of EDC, among other members, of different, interest groups, there is opposition, and I think these 2 or 3 sites are theoretical. At this point, it's hard to imagine, a candidate coming in with all of the right credentials to kind of convince the town to support this. So, that's how I look at, what the sites that Doug's has pinpointed for this. Any other comments before we open it up?
Well, no, I'm happy that it's not in residential, but like you were saying, I was actually talking to somebody from Air, and they're getting one, and they're all happy about it because they have an area where it makes sense, like a industrial area that's run down, and it perfectly makes sense.
Where?
Huh?
Where?
I don't know exactly where. They were just saying they're getting one, some industrial area. I imagine it's around maybe where the rail trail is in that area, where there's those, I don't know. But
Central Street by the, there was a dry cleaner there, or
Yeah.
Suds and something.
maybe, yeah. But it made sense for them. Whereas you were saying, it really doesn't make sense in Bolton, so even though we have these theoretical locations, and I know you're worried about Cobham, I mean, if there's an uprising against it, you know, people chaining themselves around the building, I can't imagine they're gonna wanna build anyway, even though, and I don't wanna open it up, like you said, Pandora's box to residential, so I'm pretty happy with this.
Where was town public support as predication for one of these going in noted? That's in the state law?
It is in the law.
Okay. That's a requirement, or that, what was the language, remember? That it was suggested, that it was encouraged that towns support it?
I'll read it to
I think
you.
that's really important. I'm glad you found that.
But we, you know, that was something that Larry Delaney pointed out early on, that
Okay.
that it is a component of the law.
You're a rascal.
And, you know, because it's in there, it's a little vague, so it's a question of, does that really mean anything? And I think the results of, you know, the sites that they chose have borne out that it did mean something, because I'm not aware of anyone being selected in a place where there was not local support. In most cases, either the select board or, you know, some board within the town said, we want to do this, we have a location that we'd like to see economic development in, and we think this makes sense.
Yeah, the Dennis town planner said
Yeah,
he was very
Dennis.
supportive. Norwell was actively recruiting these, and now I'm hearing Air was.
Dennis has 2, and they're looking at a third.
Okay.
2 granted, and I'm looking at a third.
And they're happy just because of what, stimulus?
They obviously embraced it, you know, as a town.
So, I can read it to you.
If we had an industrial area where it was empty, you almost rather have, you know, I don't
No,
know.
I don't disagree.
Well, if you have a medical community.
Yeah,
I mean, that's-
with an empty building, it almost, I mean, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense here.
Under submissions, application submissions in the state law, it says it's got a list of criteria. They won't consider one, the state won't consider one that's submitted after the due date specified. They may conduct a site visit to the proposed location to determine the appropriateness of the site. A selection committee shall evaluate and score the applications.
This is all at the state level.
That's right. Because, you know, the permit is issued at the state level,
Yeah.
and then they would have to go through the town, so.
To get a special
So,
permit here.
I mean, you know, obviously, no one applied for one in Bolton that we're aware of, and certainly nothing was brought to the town asking us, you know, to speak on anything being applied for Bolton. But the registration approval is done through the state. And then number, or letter D, for purposes of scoring, the department may take into account, desired geographical location of the RMDs, convenience and proximity to Massachusetts residents, and avoidance of clustering of RMDs in one area, local support for the RMD application, likelihood of citing the RMD in the proposed location in the presence of a home delivery system and other mechanisms to assure appropriate patient access, as well as other factors described in the form.
Okay.
So, you know, local support is one of the criteria. I think if somebody applied for one in the town and you know, unequivocally the town was opposed to it, and the town, you know, spoke to the application as being opposed to it, I find it hard to believe that the state would be interested in permitting it.
Unless every town is giving that same uprising, but we see on 20 occasions, that's not happening.
But in the event that that does happen, they still have to go through a permitting process in the town, and that's what we're discussing.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah,
discussing what are our local regulations. The law, you know, provides for specifically the right of a community to create reasonable local regulations to regulate and to evaluate, you know, the submissions, so.
Open it up. David?
Where to begin? I think the idea of isolating it to farms is good, but I can see that it would be very, very hard to get by town meeting particularly if you guys are opposing it. So I'm willing to accept Xing residential out of it. What you read from there, I think, was Board of Health regulation, not the law, right? I mean, the law is just that little thing that was on the ballot, right? Or was there a huge law?
It's the regulations.
Yeah. So we are dealing with Board of Health regulations, not the law, and it says the state may, or the Board of Health may consider law. Larry and I had this debate. He said, you know, if there isn't local support, it can't happen. Well, if you read that, they may consider that.
Right.
To my point, if all the towns are saying no, then they're gonna throw that away. I think you're right.
And that's where I come next, is, yeah, it's real easy to find places that want it now when we're doing 35. But there's gonna be another round, and pretty soon it's gonna be recreational, and there's so much money here, people are just gonna be fighting hard to have these places. So I think it gets a lot more risky as time goes on and the number of facilities increases. And my final point is, I am really, really intent on protecting Bolton Woods Way from Cobham. And I think the way to do that is to make the residential setback 750 feet. And I want you guys to bring a bylaw to town, and if you absolutely won't do it, accept it 500 feet. I think that will be an issue on town meeting floor. And my guess is nearly all the Bolton Woods Way people will not want Cobham to be processing medical marijuana. And I think there's a pretty good chance of getting something done to take Cobham out of the picture. And I really think it should be taken out of the picture.
So if you did 750, that would just leave what? The north side of 117 and...
Yeah, basically it would leave Paragon in that area, and I don't know about, I guess it would leave Skinner.
And maybe Kane.
No, Skinner would be eliminated.
What about Country Club or David?
I mean, I think it's important, you know, the state's starting with these 35, they're gonna get them up and running and see how they run. So they're not gonna expand the pool, you know, for 3 to 5 years, I would say.
So
I don't think there's like this, you know, stampede to
Politicians are
expand.
getting into it themselves.
I know, but, and then you just have to get back to the theoretical part. I think, you know, you've heard from the board, you know, I think there's
So you eliminate
consensus
that part.
amongst the board that we're not interested
You're doing building.
in having a facility in town.
Yeah, that's what
We
I'm
do
doing.
need to have more than one site, theoretical site. You know, there doesn't seem to be a lot of support for it, and I think everybody has to kind of, you know, realize that, how important that is. A protection.
Why isn't Concord spot zoning?
Barn, right?
You know, a little bit of that.
They got one place in Concord where they allow it. Why isn't that spot zoning? In fact, they created a single space for it.
No, I mean, they have more than one site.
Relatively large
That's 750.
area over there.
It's Emerson, then their clinics,
at 750.
their clinics on the Concord side of Route 2.
I
So
think
I think it's 3
that's
parcels.
as spot zoning as Paragon would be.
So it's Paragon and...
Well, you know, I hear what you're saying, and, you know, I had this fight with you last time on the country,
Well, because of this
on,
1500.
the salt
Salt
box.
box, yeah.
You know, you can make up a rule for any property you want, David, and you'll do that, you know, God bless you. But their zone business, and their zone industrial, and their housing developments that are near them. And, you know, we either put it, you know, one place or the other, and I I don't agree with your logic.
Yeah, okay. I just-
It would eliminate Skinner at 650. Did you say 650 or 750?
750.
750. It would eliminate Skinner. We think there would be a part of the Kane property that would still be available.
Kane
So-
property is probably less bothersome to me than almost anything.
It's right on the highway, yeah, and that's usually something towns want to
So
do.
it's 750 would be, part of the cane.
So
and part of-
750 would allow 2 spots.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Kane and.
Yeah, I think so. I
What
think so.
about Slater? Did Slater get knocked out too?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just go for 650 and compromise, and then you can get the Kane property, and you'll still lose Skinner, but you'll protect Bolton Woods?
Well, because I don't believe that 650 protects Bolton Woods more than 500 does. I think that's a completely arbitrary thing that David's come up with. I don't agree with it. I mean, I don't agree that the salt box shouldn't be in the overlay. I mean, we can fight this, till the end of time. I mean, I just don't agree.
Yeah, it's just one of those things
I think
that
you're
they're not-
making arbitrary decisions, which we all are. We are. I think that, I just feel strongly, here's what I feel strongly about, that it's not right to say only this location is the right one, just this one little spot. And that the east end of town is where we should put all the stuff we don't like. And if you happen to live near there, sorry, but the rest of us think that's a good thing. I don't like it. I like the idea of more than one location. I don't like the idea of anywhere in town, obviously, but that's my thinking. I mean, that's just my arbitrariness.
It's valid.
Mr.
Are
Chairman.
there any other comments? David?
First of all, I agree with you on not wanting this, or I wish we could come up with a way with not singling out the east side, and that's one reason I like the farm idea. And I still do like the farm idea, it's just that I don't think politically it's got much of a chance. I have a technical question. If you're 50,000 feet up and you look down, there's a certain distance between the edge of Cobham and the edge of the nearest Bolton Woods Way place. If you walk it, it's longer because you're going uphill. Are these measurements always done looking down from 50,000 feet, or would they take account of the fact that there's some walking uphill to be done?
Measured in a straight line from the nearest point of the residence, meaning a corner of a house, okay, to the nearest point of the proposed RND, meaning a part of the building. Okay, so it's not lot lines.
So Eric, as an engineer, is that following the slope?
No, that's a straight line. It doesn't, it
From
won't
a
follow
bird's
the-
eye view.
It's a bird's eye
Two-dimensional
view.
A straight line from a bird's eye
Yes.
view.
Yeah.
Because a straight line, I mean, the wording, to me, would be you put it on the edge of Cobham and the
Are
edge
you
of
a
the
lawyer,
Bolton
David?
Woods.
Are you a lawyer by any chance?
No.
No, but this is
Wonderfully.
this is good though. I mean, these are the things that matter.
And I am not gonna tell you that my measurements are accurate,
Yeah.
okay? I've tried to be accurate. What I will do is ask for a map to be prepared for the town meeting with circles on it, so that we can accurately, and then that will be more accurate, but, again, with the caveat that we won't guarantee it. I mean, at the end of the day, an engineering firm is gonna have to go out there and take these measurements if somebody tries to propose something to see how it works. But I've done it with the best intentions of trying to draw these lines in a way that we can understand what they mean.
I did it with the GIS map, and you're very close.
Okay.
At 500, you're very close.
It's the
On that
corner
side.
of Cobham to the House 50 in Bolton Way Woods is 527 feet per GIS. So,
Okay.
and I didn't count going uphill,
Yeah.
a straight line.
Great, well, thank you, Doug. That's great.
So I guess I would ask that we take a vote on these two options, just so that we know what we're gonna submit for our hearing.
So we'd be looking,
And
we'd be looking for, you know, a motion of support for, you know, residential setbacks of 500 feet and school and places where children congregate at 1,500 feet.
right, I would make the motion, so we could vote on that first, and then if that doesn't pass, we can vote on the other one. That we vote to support and put forth the version that excludes residential, and that limits, this does say 15,000, it should be 1,500. It says 15,000 in words, but it says 15 with 3 zeros, so it'd be 15 with 2 zeros. Limit the sites where children congregate to 1,500 square feet. That revised version that I put forward here tonight.
Is the second?
Well, I just have a question. Is that another typo on the one excluding residential? Both residential and business are crossed out in that? I thought that Kane was business. And that was also planning to be added. So that's point B under 250-23.1. So where residential and business are in blue, there's a line through it.
He's suggesting that not be crossed out.
That's, was my understanding, is that it should only be residential crossed out, not business as well.
That's correct.
It's limited recreation business district.
That's correct. You're right. That is a typo. So we're striking residential. We are not striking business. And when you go to Article XX plus 2, we've said no on residential. We've said no on limited business, recreational business.
Special permit.
Special permit in business, limited business, and industrial.
That's right.
Subject to the setbacks.
We just discussed, like, so 500 versus 600. I'm guessing if we do 500, there's potential for an amendment to 600.
Absolutely.
Potential
So,
for amendment to 15,000 as well.
yeah. So, what happens, so if it's 600, that gets rid of Cobham and not Skinner?
Yeah, we get rid of Skinner too.
It's taking bites out of
Yeah.
all of them,
Yeah.
except Paragon, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
So it just makes it really hard to kind of place them.
Yeah.
You know, you have one corner of a parcel rather than centered in the
Right,
parcel,
yeah.
so it's,
And I would just challenge you to tell me what's the difference between 500 feet and 600 feet?
Well, it sounds like it would just get rid of Cobham.
But what is the
Yeah,
difference?
in theory.
To a person who lives in a house,
No, yeah, you
what is that 100-foot difference?
Well,
How can you
well,
tell
potentially
me
they
that
have to
that's
build,
justified
Well,
because it makes a big difference?
just the argument is they would maybe have to build a new facility or something, and they wouldn't be able to
Okay,
move right into
well,
it.
that sounds obstructionist.
It's a big difference to the 50 houses in
28.
28 houses in
Yes.
Bolton Woods Way.
Well, I was just bringing it up because there's probably going to be an amendment to that.
No, I know.
It sounds like.
I know. I'm just telling you what I'm gonna say when it happens. You know, we tried to provide protection, and the 500-foot setback to residential is nothing that any other town has done, so I hope that it will pass. I mean, you know, so we could, you know, if we were to, the more we extend that, the more there is the potential that it could be viewed as being excessive.
Right. No, I agree.
I don't know. I mean, I'm hopeful that it will pass.
Mr. Chairman, one small point.
sure.
The, as Doug has written it, right to farm is taken out. Home occupation, do you consider that so unlikely that there's no reason to include it?
Well, if it's not allowed in residential, it's not allowed as a home occupation.
Okay, so that,
Yeah.
if it's out of residential, no worries at all about home
Right, it's
occupation.
explicitly not allowed. You know, home occupation are things that are not really talked about, right, that might, you know, that up to the discretion of, you know, basically the selectmen, are they allowed? If something is explicitly not allowed, they can't allow it.
What about the barn
bylaw.
It's relative to a house. The barn would be an accessory to a residential,
It's
to
not
a house.
it's
If
not one of the
residential's out, then
permitted
that's out.
uses. But I would say that, you know, if somebody's ill and they claim a hardship, you know, they could grow their own
Yeah.
on their property.
And that's outside of any.
Yeah, I don't think we're
Yeah.
worried about that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kirshner on Kettle Hole. In this bylaw is a definition of RMD, and it says medical marijuana treatment centers and/or registered marijuana dispensaries shall be known as RMDs, and that's all fine. But it's a little more narrow than if you go to 105 CMR 725.004 down at the bottom. And I'm not going to read that whole thing, but in summary, it says, unless otherwise specified, RMD refers to the site or sites of dispensing, I think we've covered that, cultivation, we haven't covered that, and preparation of marijuana. And I guess I feel in a bylaw that there are times to be narrow and there are times to be broad. And I think a definition, we should be broad, so somebody doesn't come in and say, well, I'm not thinking about what you defined as R&D, I'm thinking about this, and therefore, let's not even talk about your bylaw. 'Cause it doesn't-
Well, I took the definition verbatim from the definitions in the state regulations.
Doesn't it say somewhere in here about as defined in the state regulations?
So where we did, you know, the article that provides the definition of medical marijuana treatment center or similar facility
Yeah, underlined.
to be known as a registered marijuana dispensary. It is registered in the state.
I know, you're right.
Yeah.
All of that is verbatim from the definition from the state public health regulations.
Do you have a copy of that, Mr. Gershon?
So,
So it's on the second page, and it's underlined at the top, close to the top.
Article XX+1.
And,
I have some extra copies back here if you want. It makes it easier.
Just show him that one.
This is the copy that has.
and I would, you know, my opinion would be that the
Yeah,
definition
if you want.
that we put in our bylaws would define it and be used, you know, wherever else we talk about it. So I didn't feel the need to restate the entire definition in that other section.
oh, okay. This is in the bylaw?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, I'm all right.
it's a
I
separate
was
definition.
over here on the front, and it seemed
Yep,
rather...
thank you. I tried to keep it, like I said, verbatim with what the state had come up with. I think it's pretty all encompassing.
Yes, that is. I retract.
So Doug put forward a motion. Are there any other questions before we? Anyone?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Yes, sir.
Gil Burns, Sugarloaf. What's the process now? One of the meetings you said a public hearing. Is this the public hearing? Okay, could you tell me what that string is? What the events are?
So, what we're voting on tonight is what we're gonna post and notice in the paper for the public hearing. And I don't think we put all the language in there, but we have to have the language available for anyone to come look at, who wants to look at it before that hearing. We have to post 2 weeks before,
Correct.
and I assume we're gonna do that right away now.
Yeah, that's probably the next thing on the agenda, well, after we talk about all this.
And then we will hold that hearing and review the language that we have finalized tonight. There is a school of thought that you should hold that hearing before you have to finalize it, because then you can make changes. We made the intentional decision not to do that because we wanted to give ourselves the extra time to make changes beforehand, frankly. So we don't really, I don't think we have time to make changes after the hearing. It is an open hearing where people can present, again, any, you know, opinions or questions or review. we have in the past, if we noted a typo or something like that, been able to correct that. But substantial
Material.
information would stay the same and what would go forward with the... Now, at the hearing is when the board votes to support or not to support. This is what we're putting forth to the hearing. We'll have another vote at that time. It's possible we could choose not to support it.
Will you post this on your website, bylaw, so people can read it, or you said it would be available?
It's usually available at the
It's
town clerk.
Yeah, town clerk.
Okay.
Yeah, copies.
That's sort of a good point. If
I can
people
find out if I
Yeah,
can post it.
if you can
Yeah,
put it on the
sure.
web, that
Yeah.
would be good. I'd just like to thank the board for the responsiveness to the town's vote on medical marijuana moratorium, and particularly Doug, because I know he put a lot of work into this.
I'll second it.
Hearing,
And while we disagree on that one point, overall, I think the planning board's response to this has been excellent.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. So we're moving on to one last bit of work on the barn, stable, and carriage house bylaw. So at the last town meeting, we had to amend it to say that accessory apartments, those structures had to have existed on the site. They couldn't be moved on the site. If they, you couldn't take a building that existed in Bolton prior to 1925 and move it from, James's house to my house. So now we have one other piece and it's related to accessory uses, so it's the same thing, that for an accessory use, you can't move a carriage house or a barn or a stable onto the property, that it has to have existed on that property before 1925. So hopefully that'll be the last kind of correction. So do we need to, does anybody have any comments on that? Does that seem clear?
So, are we putting the whole bylaw in the warrant?
Yeah, for the barn and stable, because we're moving it from where it is now
Oh, okay.
to the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
So we have to.
So
put the
that's,
whole thing
because
in.
normally if you make a small change like that, you don't need to put the whole bylaw
I think because we're renumbering it all,
in. Okay.
they're putting it all in.
Are you comfortable with your explanation of this? Do you remember the last time we
I
did
know,
a little bit of a...
It's very
Who said
confusing
what?
for me.
Planning board doesn't know what it's doing?
Yeah, the youngsters at the planning board don't know what they're doing. It's a great compliment to be called young.
I mean, I think it's a pretty clear, simple clarification that I think most
Yeah.
people would support. We need a clear explanation of
What did pass, the last one did pass, even though I was
Right.
not very clear about it. So yes, I will work on the clarity for the town meeting.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fine.
So do we need to vote on that?
Well, do we need to, but I make a motion that we present this as specified here for the hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? So we're moving on to the mixed-use village overlay district. So that's one of the things that's kind of come up in the working group meeting, wanting to expand the name, just instead of village overlay district, to kind of expand that it's about mixed use and maybe not so much
Sure.
about a village center. So that was just something that came up, so that's its new name. The last meeting, I think you got the meeting notes, but at our last meeting, we met with all of the landowners. So we met with Kathy Adams, representing, I think, the interests of herself and her siblings. I think there are 4 or 5 of them for the Kane property. We met with, I think it's Jeff O'Neill and his engineer from Bolton Office Park. And we met with, is it Bob David? Dr. David's husband. They own Bolton Corners, which used to be called Freitas's, yeah. So he was there, and Marco Hagen came. He's the one who's bought the 40B across from Colonial Candies. He just came because he's interested in what we're doing.
He bought, or he's the developer for?
Both.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he bought it from Freitas, yeah.
And then Mr. Freitas was there. He owns the property around Dr. David's office. There's kind of a horseshoe-shaped parcel between Bolton Corners and the 40B that Marco Hagen owns. So we had 5 owners, and I guess a lot has changed in development in the last
That's great,
2
you were
or
able
3
to get
years.
them all there.
Yeah, so they were all interested in coming, and they were all, we sent them ahead of time the pictures and the article, and they were all, I guess there's been a big change in development, but for awareness of development, but they all liked the idea. They thought it would help them. The village overlay, mixed-use village overlay concept would help them.
I still like
with
that
their
discotheques are not allowed. Discotheques and dance halls. Kept that in place.
That's in there?
Yep.
They even said they would, come to town meeting, write letters of support. So that went well. We were supposed, the working group was supposed to have a meeting on Monday night, and then we had some late cancellations. We didn't have a quorum, so we didn't have that meeting. And at that meeting, we had a few, small items to discuss. I think it'd be good if we quickly discuss them here. So we weren't able to meet and kind of vote to pass the article on to the planning board. So our deadline has been extended till end of next week. Thursday. So we're going to meet on Wednesday, and hopefully.
So we can vote on it at the hearing?
Actually, the working group's going to meet next Wednesday and vote. I don't know how we're going to vote, but there's going to be a vote to send this on to the planning board. So one of the ideas is tonight is to, a vote to support the article. Maybe there'll be a few changes, minor changes to it, and I'll kind of go over that. But if we want to get the article in for the spring town meeting, that's what we need to do. If people are feeling like there's no rush, then, we could back off and hope that there's a fall town meeting or wait another year. I don't think MAPC would be, they have these grants on their books and they like to get things kind of tidied up.
Well, the group did all that work, so,
I think it's,
if they're ready with it.
timing is good now if you're ready to move forward with it.
Yeah, so I guess the issues that came up, just to go over them, I guess one was, 2 issues that came up at the end of the last meeting. One was about maximum square footages, so it was a concern about big box stores.
Can I comment on that? Just reading this bullet point?
Yeah.
50,000 for a grocer is not that big. 8 to 15 is a very small
Right.
maybe Trader Joe's could fit.
Well,
Right.
50,000 still allows for like a price chopper and, because like if there's a market here for say like a market basket, they can reduce their square footage to make it work.
Yeah, 50's on the small
It's on the
end
small
of
end,
a,
but
you know,
Okay.
full-size grocery store.
yeah.
As opposed to a novelty.
I'd agree with
or
that.
specialty.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Right, so Mark Dibbs is it Mark? Mark Dibbs?
Oh, yeah, yep.
He's the engineer for Bolton Office Park, and he sent us an email. He hoped we'd do 60,000 if there was a limit on it. I think the biggest thing in the overlay is that we have the residential component, and I
Sure.
don't think we need to specify to limit the size of the buildings, because
Because
Okay.
it's gonna be
That's
limited
good.
by the 10%.
Exactly, yeah.
it's gonna be limited by a whole bunch of factors that you need to have a balance of a residential and commercial. And, you know, by right, they can build, and by our bylaws, you know, if they follow them, they have to build one big structure per lot, or they could subdivide and have two big.
Okay. They could build a 50,000 square
So-
foot thing now,
so-
can't
True.
Yeah, bigger,
they? Yeah.
bigger.
But
so-
only on 8% of a lot. So right now, the Kane property, just as an example,
Yep.
the maximum they can get there on their business zone land is about 55,000 square feet, and has not been what they were happy to move forward with. They wanted more than that.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the right number. It's somewhere between
Right.
48 and
So we are
60.
going from 8% up to 10%, so, you know, that you know,
And was there, it says, was there a percentage set for residential versus business or no?
well, that's the second
That's
piece
another-
is the
I think that's
second,
smart though, to not limit the size of that to 50 or any number, because you've got enough limitations.
I don't think it's necessary with
Sure.
the residential component. Then the other issue was the mix, you know, specifying a percentage, like 60/40, 60% commercial, 40% residential. So in the article, it's under H, for H housing. Number 2, it says the mix of uses shall be balanced and compatible and shall contribute to a vibrant village atmosphere. So, right now, you know, that's the language, and just whether we should be more specific, saying, and
Do you know what
again,
Wayland Town Center is for a mix?
no, I don't, but again, I don't think,
Does that just give the planning board the ability to,
Yeah, it gives you some flexibility.
gives the ability to, when the developer comes in, say you need more residential, by just having that quote, that line there?
well, yeah, that line in there is for both the design review board and the planning board
Yeah.
to say, is this the right mix?
Yeah.
So it's based on what they're presenting rather than
Yeah.
a number.
I think that's
Um,
smart. Yeah.
You know, but it's more subjective, and, you know, for people who want things locked in, you know, maybe that's too loose. But,
It's, again, the mitigating factor is the 10% footprint. So you take any parcel
Yeah.
and you can put buildings on 10% of it. You know, somebody could use this to say, oh, I'm gonna do a 40B type thing and get as much density as I could possibly get, frankly. But they would still be limited by that 10%. So let's say that 10% allows them 50,000 square feet and on the biggest piece of property, right? And they want to do half business and half residential, so there's 25,000 for residential, so they can do, you know, 1,000 square foot apartment
Yeah.
condos, or 12, you know, 2,000 square foot. So it's not like they can do 100. You know, they're going to be limited by that 10%. So, and the intent of this is to encourage higher density and, you know, more of a village.
Yeah. No, I think the whole idea is great.
But to your point, keeping that little added level of subjectivity, flexibility, not locking it as much.
I think that's
right,
smart.
does everyone feel comfortable
I do.
with that?
I mean,
Yeah.
what it means is that someone could come forward with I'm gonna put a 50,000 square foot building up and I'm gonna have 2 apartments. You know, well, we think that's a good balance. What do you think?
Yeah, right.
So the board's gonna have to decide on that. It leaves that door open,
Yeah.
but I don't think if you went 64, I think that is too arbitrary. And it will, if the goal is to get some development done that includes housing,
Yeah.
you need to have some flexibility in it.
Agree.
Otherwise, you're gonna end up with something that's too rigid that no one will ever do.
Yeah, we want it to be creative and, you know, I think it's good to keep it open, to foster
A
that.
few questions and comments, Mr.
Sure,
Chairman.
oh, good.
First off, who is KFT? I looked at the meeting minutes and I can't figure out.
Where is that?
Yeah, who is KFT making all the comments on here?
Oh, that's Ken Troop.
Okay.
Ken Troop and Red.
Okay,
So those are the other
Now
two
the-
issues.
the actual land that's gonna fall under the overlay district, is that basically what it was the last time minus the salt box?
I'm not
I didn't see that
familiar.
defined in there.
Yeah, it does need to be defined, you know, which parcels, but I'll just, the working group voted to include Bolton Office Park,
Mhm.
but not the 3 little houses. You know, it's just, in terms of, like, even knocking them all down, and it's just
Does
such...
Bolton Office Park own that land?
No,
They're all separate lots.
It's just, they're tiny lots, they don't really add much. Anyway, so it's Bolton Office Park.
And 2 of them are already spoken for between the vets and if the bank plan
Yeah.
goes forward.
Which is, Bolton Office Park is the,
Yankee Atomic,
excuse me,
the old Yankee Atomic.
It's
Yeah.
right across from Delta Financial,
the
so.
ones who want to do the senior.
Yes.
They want to do the senior, but they came in after reading the whole article with a whole design
Okay.
that included a market, you know,
Okay.
leveling the existing structure and putting in.
Emulex?
What?
Getting rid of Emulex or whatever the,
Where that,
The whole
that
thing.
office part, that office building, demolishing it and starting
Wow.
from scratch. So they
That's
came in-
Condyne, that's the company that owns it?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, so is that parcel, but excluding the 3 small pieces,
Yeah, and then it's,
everything north of 117?
Dr. David, that's the Bolton Corners, including the parcel, Freddie Friedis's parcel behind that. So
Okay.
basically, that's the northwest corner, and then the Kane property, the southeast corner.
But did you also include part of their residential?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's
Which I thought made
the
sense.
residential parcels behind it,
Yeah.
but not the ones at the corner.
but by including it, you could have a really good residential area in the back and the commercial.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right. So that's,
But it gives the developer the opportunity,
Yeah, it's
if, once
awesome,
it's
yeah.
included, they can just figure out the best
Yeah,
configuration.
no, it's
but-
great, yeah.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Couple
Yeah.
nitpicky points, both on
Go
page
ahead.
2. Second line down, handcrafted artisan crafts just sounds redundant. If they're handcrafted, then they'd be crafts, but I don't know if there's a better way of phrasing that, and it's not a very strong objection on my part, just pointing that out. And then,
crafty
Why don't you
crafts.
just say artisan crafts, because maybe they're,
well, then they could be mass-produced crafts.
They could
which
be.
I don't know if there is such a thing, but
well,
Where-
this is
which
the
line
one-
is
anybody
that?
who runs a little
Parcel.
shop is gonna buy something that's produced by somebody else. They're not gonna produce everything themselves.
So that's just in relationship to live, work,
yeah. I just-
apartments that would be part of the residential.
Reading through it, that just seemed like a odd combination of words. And then under
So you
E,
want Cynthia
the
to-
last line, food may be consumed outdoors in landscape terraces designed for dining purposes. You're a landscape architect, so educate me. To me, terraces are defined by different levels. That's
Yeah.
what I think of when I think of terraces, but maybe there's a
The
different definition.
terraces,
Yeah, think
I would
it's
say
more like a patio or something like that.
terrace
but-
is a leveled surface. How would you, coming from engineering, I'd say terrace now is not just like a retained, like a
Not like that.
retained, like you have terracing in vineyards and things like that. with a retaining wall, but terraces can also just be outside your front door.
Okay.
So
It
it's
just,
a flat, prepared area, like
again, not a
pea
big deal.
stone, yeah.
It just, one of the first image that popped up on my head, I thought that would be murder on the serving staff going up and down.
It's just that they're intentional, it's not like throwing a picnic table out on the lawn, that it's like a designed,
Could we just replace it with patio and then there's no patio?
It was just me. It's
Okay.
not a big deal.
Okay.
It's more clarification for my own self.
I would say
What are you, a
that
lawyer?
MAPC has done, done most of the work on this, and they've done a great job. So it's, these definitions probably mostly come from them.
Yeah, reading through it, it seems very, very, very familiar to
Yeah,
all the
I
time
mean,
we
you-
spent on
exactly.
the other
This is
iteration.
your work. I think.
So I would add, to actually to Ken's comment here about R&D on,
Right.
that maybe there's a way to just add a little bit of language there that would allow for software development. I mean, that's certainly a big growing business that is not necessarily harmful to the environment or anything.
Okay, yes.
I think this is intended, in other places where we've limited R&D, I think it's intended to be industrial R&D. Maybe adding that word would work, or alternatively saying this does not prohibit, a business that is involved with software development.
Or
Just
the
a way
previous
to-
paragraph put in, like, software R&D
Design
under
boards.
permitted uses as opposed to prohibited uses.
And
Does that
so,
sound right?
Or video game R&D. I mean, I think he might be getting a little bit too literal here, thinking that this would exclude that. But, would we be opposed to a company that had a big office space that had a bunch of programmers doing video development? Is that R&D?
No.
I don't
As
think
an
that's
private
R&D. but-
identity. My company puts the money we spend on our development division in as R&D costs. Imagine MathWorks probably does something similar in their books.
So just a way to allow for
I don't know if it makes a difference with regard to zoning since it's just an
computer,
accounting.
what do you call it? Software
we'll flag
businesses.
that for.
Well, I'm a hardware
yeah.
engineer, so I design boards and
And well,
we we have like a little lab to debug stuff, but I mean, there's no harsh chemicals or
yeah,
anything.
you're not bringing in lead.
No.
building
You're not
it
sitting there with a soldering iron, you're.
But we do have
doing firmware.
soldering iron, but we're not allowed to have any lead or anything. I mean,
No, I think the concern is exhausts, and then it's the type of wastewater that's
Right.
coming out of them.
So it might be just
I'm sure Cynthia can come up with something.
The question is,
yes to.
do we mean to exclude people who are doing computer software or hardware
Includes
development
Emulix.
that doesn't involve wastewater and
Yeah.
smoke and,
I would say
industrial
something
uses?
like-
If we're not, then let's make sure we say something that allows for it.
Emulex would probably be considered R&D, and I think that's a perfect, that's fine, if they want to come in, I mean,
Well,
doing that
this
for
is in the
design.
business zone, so we have industrial, and so Paragon, they're probably doing all of that messy stuff there.
Yeah.
And they have,
Yeah.
they have the space, and hopefully they're cleaning the exhaust,
Yeah.
and they have the septic system.
well, but just I'm saying, R&D, if it's like a software environment, that's probably called R&D, but they're on a computer, so.
Pretty much indistinguishable from, accounting firm.
Yeah.
People in front of computers.
Exactly, yeah. If you could distinguish it like like no manufacturing or something like that, then that's different. However, that could be.
Yeah, so we'll work on that. That's a good point from Ken. Anything else, John?
No, that was all my comments.
So lastly, the special permit process, Ken has a lot of comments about that process being too onerous, but I think that's, that the whole design review board was put in place very recently, as part of the special permit process for business. So
But the question that I would have is, has this just duplicated what's already on design review and what's already on special permit? And if it has, I don't think you need to duplicate it. I think you could simply say follow the special permit process, which lists, at least some of these. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if this is basically the special permit process, you know, I don't see it being a bad thing to have it kind of spelled out in the article.
Well, I mean, you know, degree to which the proposed project complies with the goals of the master plan. Well, the goals of the master plan are to create a village overlay, so this is part of a village overlay, so
Mhm.
I don't know. What do you have to say?
Okay.
I don't know, that's just a simple one.
Can I make a quick comment about E? Just these permitted uses. Talking about dwelling units and assisted living units. You add in independent living units, which is kind of in the middle, it's assisted living light, or do you think that's kind of covered by residential? I know you don't want a nursing home, but that's not really the intent of the overlay, but in the industry, you're seeing as many of these independent living facilities pop up as assisted living facilities. I think that stays in line with everything, in line with the intent of what you're trying to do here, unless you think it's already covered by residential dwelling units, which you could make the argument it is. Small point. but
So adding what?
It couldn't hurt to just right before assisted living units, add independent living units.
So that's kind of that's what they call granny flats?
It kind of is. I mean, it's 55 plus housing, and then independent living, and then assisted living, and then Alzheimer's care, and then a skilled nursing facility, a real nursing home.
Mhm.
That's kind of the chain of them.
Okay, I mean, I mean, you can ask Cynthia if you need to be
Okay.
more specific, but I think.
You might be
again-
covering yourself
again,
with
it's-
resi units.
No, I think again, it's gonna be the developer's conception of what's gonna sell. I mean.
That's why I say I don't wanna
And the
limit it to
planning
that.
board's feedback, like, you know, there's a lot of interest in town in places for people who are gonna sell their houses to move to as kind of intermediate step.
Yep.
But, so it could be good to, I think they call, you know, in the popular jargon, they're called granny flats.
You're right. I mean,
Um,
that's the concept, yeah.
As
It's-
a way station between your house and assisted living.
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
Also in our part E, one in each paragraph, talks about fast food restaurants, and it says see definition of Article VI of this bylaw. Does that mean to point somewhere else?
That was probably from when we had the fast food as part of it the first time, I'm wondering.
You want to just redirect that pointer to wherever
Yep.
it currently resides?
And we passed the fast food bylaw last May. So it should be in our bylaws that we would have a bylaw.
So section blah, blah,
Section
blah,
reference.
blah.
I actually think it is Article 6.
No, maybe it is. We don't know what the new the wording is. Let's have the old one. So maybe that's right. But it shouldn't say of this bylaw, it should say of the town bylaw? Town bylaws?
I think it's in the same chapter, so I think he's referring to the zoning bylaw.
Okay, of the zoning bylaw?
I'm like that, I'm old school, I still got the old copy. And maybe it's right, but we want to just make
Yeah.
sure that the references are all,
I mean, we could be more
Looking the right
specific,
way.
so basically, it is Article 6 definitions, but then we could call out Section 250-28 terms defined. I mean, it's, I think it's kind of a moot point, but,
well, whatever. It's just
Yeah.
based on what I had in my
Yeah,
hand,
yeah,
I
no,
was
no.
like, oh,
No, that's the definition. Fast food. So where does the bylaw?
oh, there's an actual bylaw for fast food?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of that one.
And it's new.
Is she talking about the bylaw, or is she talking about just the definition of a fast food?
What does it say?
it says, see definition in Article 6 of this
Because there's a
bylaw.
definition
Oh,
of
okay.
fast food in
She's
that
referencing
section.
definition. Where is the fast food? I've
Do you know if it was under?
Never seen this.
Do you know if it was in zoning or if it was in other parts of the
No,
code?
it's definitely zoning.
I definitely haven't seen it.
Huh. Do we have a?
Oh, like a table of contents?
The cheat sheet.
Electronically searchable, what's wrong with this?
Oh, that's done. So zoning's three.
She actually, no, she was actually fine with it,
Three zoning.
but she wanted the residential to be commercial.
Oh, boy, it's supposed to be easier.
General references, I don't see it.
Well, if we were familiar with it, it would be.
Yeah, she was saying
She wanted to rezone the residential.
to commercial, but she was fine with 8% on that huge
So
area.
we say drive, we're thinking about not allowing drive-through.
Yeah, okay. And not a lot.
45,000 square foot drugstore, another gas station.
And that was all under 8%.
Drive-throughs are okay for banks, pharmacies, and other retail
That would've fit under
services,
8%.
but not for
I
food.
think,
Well, of the whole, yeah.
of the whole thing. Sorry.
I gotta watch that tape again.
Go back and see that. It's still there.
That's the right town.
So,
So different.
is Ken in meetings?
Yeah, it's
Pushing
a
for
modern
that-
font.
That was our viewpoint to the
Um,
group?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean,
Special
Ken,
regulations.
Ken, you know, did this work on his own and he met with Erica through each of those items. And so
Okay.
the working group hasn't discussed his
Sorry, I'm just
comments.
curious.
And will that be?
Since you don't know what I'm talking about, I'd like to
Yeah.
be able to find it for you.
So, while they're talking, I don't know if we, how does it work procedural wise if we kind of vote to go ahead with it? We just give them some,
Well,
our notes from
conditioned on,
conditioned on our notes from tonight? Or?
you know, conditioned on what's sent to us next week. It's kind of a back to the future thing.
Okay, and then we would do a final vote at the hearing? Or not?
Yes.
So we're just kind of saying that this is gonna present.
No, this is
We're just, you know, the schedule's really tight.
I know, yeah.
And,
But I'm saying, I think we should get it to the hearing, definitely.
yeah, so,
And then it
so
goes
we,
to
you know, we want the
correspondence.
working
I don't
group
know.
to discuss it
Right.
and,
Well, we
you
definitely
know,
passed the
give our
bylaw.
support passing it. you
This
know,
is online, right? It's just,
Yeah,
I gotta look
this is
through this
what I
thing.
heard.
It's got some
Yeah.
weird pieces
But
I've
I
never
don't
seen
know where
before.
it
But
goes.
the issues that we're gonna discuss are the ones, you know.
So-
Do you know,
looking at.
oh, it wouldn't be in the old copy.
There's
I was
two
gonna say,
issues
do you know where
about the
old
square
copy would
footage,
be?
the ratio of residential to business,
Yeah.
and then Ken's comments.
Hmm.
So,
So maybe
yeah,
it's
so there
not
might be a little bit of change in there.
Oh, well. Guess I need to.
You know what I'll do? I'll go online and just do a quick search for fast food. That's probably the easiest way. And then I'll let you know if I find the
There's a
bylaw.
moth superintendent. That's an alternate title for the tree warden.
What?
It says tree warden or moth superintendent.
Oh, right. That's the
There's all
winter
sorts of
moth.
stuff in there I've
Yeah.
never even heard of before.
Oh, really? How much does the month?
I know what I'm doing tomorrow when the snowstorm and it ain't work. No,
Now,
my
as far
boss
as
doesn't have
the medical
much.
marijuana bylaw that you guys just
I gotta forward
approved,
it to them.
that version didn't have the town council edits. So do I have the freedom to go ahead?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Add everything in, even
Yeah.
though?
The only thing I meant to change was excluding residential and changing the
And the setbacks.
1500.
Okay.
And then you had to also put no in the other
Right, of course. Yep.
version. Those were the only changes, so
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
And not strike business.
right.
So this might be it. Fast food, no, 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 no. And then we have a definition.
Okay.
I think that might be how it was, you know, even though we voted on some
Handled.
wording, the gist of it was, it's not allowed, and this is what it is.
So is the definition there too?
Elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
Under Article 6.
Okay.
So what's the point, so if McDonald's wanted to have plates and metal forks, it was no longer fast food, right?
They could make an argument to us that they were doing it in a way that was not the way we've defined fast food, and that would be up to
Upscale
the-
McDonald's, yeah.
both the planning board and the selectmen to vote to approve.
No, we talked about this before, I was on planning board when this was happening, but, you know, like a Dunkin' Donuts, they would need to be more of a sit-down.
Sit down and I
Real
think,
plates.
I think they'd have to like sell things.
But I
on
think they
shelves.
have restaurants like that, I really
They
do.
do.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's one in Concord, there's
in
one in
demanding
Westboro,
towns.
Yeah.
where they sit, you know, they don't have the signage that they typically have, it's more of a sit-down, they have real, and you know, they're
So-
independently
More
owned,
like a
so.
diner
Yeah,
called
it's
Dunkin' Donuts.
does the franchise
Yeah.
want to come to Bolton enough to
Yeah.
make this?
Yeah, yeah.
So we met with,
The
didn't we
franchisee,
meet with the
actually.
Concord people?
Made those changes, would we really
Jennifer
react to
brought
it?
them in.
If you really want the restaurant,
Uh,
just call it Dunkin'
yeah.
Donuts. Why even say no to it?
Anyway,
This is a big hypothetical, but.
any other comments on Ken's comments?
Did you want to talk about traffic at all? Requiring a traffic study, or do we kind of feel comfortable
So
with that?
that was the question. So traffic studies, you know, that came up in the working group, traffic studies, you know, because these three developments, you know, have the potential to create more traffic. And so when are traffic studies triggered? Is it anything on 117? That's kind of been my understanding.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there is a threshold that's been set anywhere in writing. You know, we've required them on very large subdivisions like Century Mill, and most of them we do not. Certainly any significant development on 117 would require one. But I guess the question would be, if you had someone, let's just say that somebody, one of those property owners decided to break off a piece of their property and sell it to somebody who wanted to do a very small development that was only one retail establishment and one unit of housing. I mean, that's not really what you're looking for, but I guess it's the potential that there could be something small enough that you might want to have the discretion to say for that particular one, it's not required. But I think in general, what you're proposing here, you would want to have a traffic study.
Yeah, no, I think everybody the working group wants there to be a traffic study.
Then based on what you're saying, if you have special permit already in here, you probably don't need to limit yourself, right?
But is the traffic study triggered in the special permit process?
Yeah,
Or it's-
that's my point.
okay,
That's my point.
okay.
So you can trigger it if you want to, but like Doug says, in the draconianly small scenario, you may not.
Yeah, I mean, I
But
can
like
just,
Clinton Savings Bank, when they came in,
You might
with their
wanna do it.
proposal, I think you said it would be automatic because they're on 117 that they would have,
Oh,
the state would require one.
I don't know what I said, but,
Okay. No, I'm just,
in my opinion, Clinton Savings Bank, a bank that's gonna create a lot of traffic, I'm gonna want a traffic study. So,
There's an example, why not to limit it with numbers, right? That's probably a small footprint, but yet, because of exactly where it is, yeah, you probably want to do one. So I think if you just say special permit process.
so
we can
it's
have
special
discussion.
permit process and the.
I just wanna see what our
decides.
special permit says, because I think it says, you know, at the discretion of the board, they can require a traffic study, and I think, you know, to me, that is you know, that leaves some leeway to it, but the assumption is anything that's of any significant size would require it.
I gotta say, I think the traffic study thing is a scam by the traffic engineers to get some pocket change, because as a practical matter, nothing is ever gonna change. I mean, Century Mill, we had a traffic study, and because there was so few people going down that roads, okay, we doubled the so few people going down the roads, there's still hardly anyone going down the road, so there's no difference really measurable. The
James
bank is
wasn't
moving from one
driving
side
back.
to the other, so the traffic pattern may change slightly. Some people were making rights when they made lefts before, but, you know, what are they gonna do? Make Clinton Savings Bank add more lanes and repave that section again? So, I mean, as a practical matter, it's just an added expense for people to put stuff in with no tangible benefit to the town other than something else to.
In that site though, it might be a lane. It might not be a widening, but it might be I'm sorry, not a lane, a light that gets required.
At Clinton Savings Bank,
Yeah.
it's like 100 feet from, or a couple hundred feet from the other light.
Sure.
That would be awful. That would be just awful.
No, well, I think the situation is like Century Mill, they hire the traffic engineer and they do their study.
Mhm.
And the town is given a certain amount of money, the planning board decides whether they're gonna accept those results from Century Mill or do another one where they hire the engineer. And so I think, Century Mill might have been that important site, but, with one of these sites, maybe instead of pocketing that money and putting it in the general fund, it would be a good idea if the planning board, did their own study. Because that is a huge concern with these three sites.
Yeah,
is
sure.
Traffic.
I don't think you do your own study. I think you hire an expert to represent the town
Exactly.
and evaluate the study. I mean, the people doing the study, as much as they are paid by the developer, they're professionals. They have professional standards. They have to present.
Calculations.
It's data that they're presenting, and they may present it at the light they want to present it, but it's data. You have, just like we have a consulting engineer, you have a consulting traffic consultant that represents the town, that reviews their data, and that might present it in a slightly different light, but I've never seen the town go out and say, we're going to do our own traffic study because we don't believe you. It's more having a consultant that would evaluate that on behalf of the
Yeah, it's
The
just,
difference is with Hamway, there's tangible changes that happen because of his recommendations.
Yeah.
Granted, we don't have all that many traffic studies going on in Bolton, even after the several years I've been on planning board, but I have no recollection of any actual tangible differences come from having a traffic study before or after. It does nothing.
Well, the only one that we've had of recent years has been Century Mill, and I can't think of, we haven't really had any big development in
Right,
town.
exactly.
This would be a significant development. I think it would require,
It would definitely
we wouldn't
require-
want to
I mean,
have a
you're right
traffic
off of
study.
495. You're gonna bring in traffic.
If Bolton Office Park wanted to build a pull-off, is that allowed, or does that have to go through the state, or?
It's a numbered road, that's a state road, so that's a MassDOT turning lane.
Yeah, so it's like, it would require state
law,
engineers
MassDOT.
or something,
Yep.
pull off and stuff. That would be the business's cost, right? Not Bolton's.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a traffic assessment section under the site plan approval
Right.
process, so.
Right, traffic, parking, and transportation assessment. So, and this would fall under site plan, so I don't think you need to have it in there. It is redundant.
okay. So I'll be phoning in for that meeting next week, but you'll
Definitely.
bring that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
great. So, any more discussion on this article?
Good job.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm glad that it's coming back up. I hope that the support is there.
I think they did a good job of, taking the major concerns, which was salt box and mixed use, really, that's the major difference. And, I mean, that's the only thing everybody talked about against it.
And I don't believe King is bringing any citizens petitions up at the same time.
No.
That was
Right.
another complicating factor the last time.
And somehow getting put before the overlay in the lineup, which I don't get.
Well, one of the things that was interesting in this was looking at the wetlands, because that wasn't really taken into it. And the sensitive habitat, so that kind of lowered the square footage rates across the board, and I think made the idea of the overlay more palatable to maybe some members of the working group that were, really against it the last time, so we'll see.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is up to the selectmen or possibly Don Lowe, but I don't know if we can make any recommendations as to what order we put things in. And put the medical marijuana one last, put all the less controversial ones up front. I don't know if we have any sway on what their opinion is, but you know, I'd rather have a tired crowd debating the lengthy ones.
The selectmen decide the order of the articles on town meeting warrant. They get a recommendation from the town administrator, but they make the final decision. I was kind of surprised at the order. I think it was Kurt Plant who wanted the order to be the way it was, and I was indifferent. And I think Stan agreed with
Yeah. Well, it's about attention span, like how long can you keep people, you know?
They always try to keep one interesting one toward the end. That's a way to try to keep it.
You know, I mean, if I was doing it, obviously I'm not getting paid with Bolton, so no one will pay attention to me, but I'd put the Northwood Street acceptance and then FEMA maps, the barn, then the village overlay, then the medical marijuana, you know, pretty much like that. And all to, you know, knock them out of the way. Just otherwise, so you're gonna be, you know, 5 people at 1 o'clock in the morning talking about Northwood.
But when it comes time, you know, email the selectmen with what you think.
You know, also having it on later will kind of self-limit debate to some degree. Because a lot of points, whether pro or con, will get made repeatedly. It's the Bolton way.
So, do you have a motion to bring,
I would make a motion to move forward with the mixed-use village overlay, and if the group determines if you can get it in order, to bring it to this town meeting, I think the sooner the better, actually.
Seconds?
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? So, let's see. We have the street acceptance for Northwood.
Night, David.
Night.
Is that in here, Arundel?
For which one?
Northwoods, or-
Yeah, it's at the end of that packet that has several of the articles together.
Just the front table on the front,
Yeah.
flip it over.
Yeah.
Do I have to discuss the kennels? I guess we should look at the floodplain first. I'm not seeing any. Yeah,
What do you want to take it first?
I guess in your paper, the floodplain comes first. That's
Okay,
just,
sure.
we're just accepting.
Now, for the FEMA one, I had to add in a couple of additional articles just because I had contacted FEMA to make sure that I had the right panel numbers. And she sent me an email. There were for a few additional changes that she wanted me to make within the bylaw itself. And it was just really about deleting some language that referenced.
You know, the flood boundary and floodway maps.
Yeah, exactly. Like those don't exist anymore. They're just firms. So basically I had to go through and kind of add all these additional articles to address that.
Okay, so this seems pretty straightforward. We have to have a hearing on the floodplain district. That's going to be part of the hearing.
I believe so, yeah. Yep.
Any controversy? Does anybody here now have property that's in the floodplain?
No. Negative, and if I did, I don't think FEMA is interested in my appeal anyways.
Well, I know there are towns, like in the South Shore, where 75% are now within the floodplain. And they're looking at their insurance going up like 5 times or something.
Whoa. That's lousy, but.
They're
what you pay for it
special,
regardless.
their insurance, it's the special government insurance.
Yeah.
You know, places like Plum Island, it should cease to be a surprise to anyone, since every single year on the news, they have 2 or 3 houses falling. And it just can't possibly be a surprise.
So, do we have a motion to bring this to the hearing?
I'll make a motion to bring this series of articles for the updates to the FEMA maps, Article XX and Article XX and Article XX.
As presented.
As presented.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? So, the dogs and kennels.
Yeah, so basically they want to add a section into the bylaw that allows for a special permit for dog kennels. So Pam and I have been talking about this, and we're not really sure yet who's going to be sponsoring this, but planning board might be. To me, it seems like it should be Board of Selectmen, but town council will probably make that decision, I guess. But they wanted me to at least present it to you in case it goes to planning board.
So this is coming up because we have no bylaw.
Exactly, basically
Kennels.
dog kennels can go anywhere at this point, and that's sort of
Okay.
been an issue. So I think the zoning inspector's kind of been pushing for this, so
Okay,
I
so
think he's
that's-
been working with Pam. to create
Has
it.
this been on our radar at all?
Well,
I know.
yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, the clerk started looking at, and actually with Jenny and a little bit with this board, the issue that we really, it was kind of wild, wild west with dog kennels. You know, we didn't have any regulations, and not even Board of Health or, and it came up, frankly, when we permitted the doggy daycare,
yeah.
and we put them through the process that our bylaws require, and we said, really there ought to be supervision of any dog kennel, to some level. And the clerk looked at it and came up with a bylaw that we passed last year that started the process, but it looks like this is taking it a step further and requiring that every 24 months they get a special permit, like another business, like a restaurant or a liquor license or anything like that would require, to keep them up to date. And
Why 24 months when medical marijuana gets 3 years?
I don't know, I have no idea.
So who is the
It's like
permit granting authority?
ZBA.
ZBA, okay.
I don't know, I think that's
That-
what
I
you're.
think, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is
Okay.
that I don't know.
Section A talks about the permit application shall be heard and decided upon by the
Oh, Board of Appeals. Yeah, that might be a question mark.
I guess the reason would be that it's because it's typically in a residential area. If it were in a business area, it'd come before the planning board.
Okay.
I think that might be
With that.
the distinction that would make sense.
Yeah, right, and B, special permit granting authority stating that said kennels in conformity to the zoning bylaw, so it's not conformity.
So, just a question, since I'm sort of, the zoning board, ZBA or whatever, they pretty much are the enforcers for the table of uses in the zones that the planning board sets?
So the zoning bylaw allows you to do certain things based on what the zoning bylaw says you can do. And if somebody wants to do something that it doesn't say you can do, they need to get a
Variance?
a variance from the ZBA. They're the only board that can grant a variance. So
And why isn't it the planning board, since they set it?
that's what, that's what a
I'm just
zoning board
trying
of
to-
appeals does. It grants
Okay.
variances
Okay.
to the bylaw. We enforce the bylaw and we
Yeah.
create the bylaw and
Yeah.
we manage developments
Yeah.
and subdivisions and
Yeah.
roads and drainage,
Yeah.
but we don't do variances. There's a
Okay.
separate board that does it. And that's the way it's,
Yeah.
that's the way it's always been in Massachusetts anyway.
Is that elected positions or
It
appointed?
is.
Okay.
So then when you have residential, we have a section in our bylaw that allows for home occupations. And for years, that was intentionally very vague. Didn't really say what was a home occupation, but they were sort of you know, traditional home occupations that were kind of allowed. One of them was a dog kennel. In recent years, there's been some attempt to try to define that a little bit better because it's kind of open-ended. But I think what this would be saying is that if you want to have one and you're going to be doing it in residential, you're going to have to go to the ZBA and get a permit to do it.
Okay.
But I would think that if it were in a business zone like the doggy daycare, that wouldn't go to the ZBA because it wouldn't be a variance per se. It would be just getting a special permit. But we'll see what they tell us.
You have to just say that you're doing a dog farm, it falls under the right to farm.
Does anybody live next to a kennel on the board?
I live right near Animal Adventures, but I never hear any odd sounding critters.
Alligators burping?
Adventures?
I never hear it, so keep it all well, I hear some goats every now and then. It could be anywhere.
What are the kennels in town that we're aware of?
There's one as you go down to Power Springs.
Okay,
I don't want to
You know, it's kind of like a,
okay.
it's kind of like
There's
baby
one on,
Country dogs isn't
sitting.
considered a kennel?
I
Or,
don't think they're overnight.
oh,
I think
okay,
they-
if it's only over.
but they are a permanent facility. There's one on Old Bay, there's one on West Berlin. There's several of them,
I didn't know.
probably 5 or 6 of them.
Okay.
Will they have to seek a permit if they're existing business?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Oftentimes, existing businesses are grandfathered, but it doesn't say anything.
Well, in
about it.
24 months, so maybe, yeah, does that time frame start?
Grandfathered for 24 months.
It'd be for 24 months, yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I think the intent would be to get the existing ones in compliance,
Right.
but I'm not sure legally how that works.
No, we haven't permitted any sand and gravel operations since 1972, but we still have them. Well, one.
I think it's petering out. They're running out of sand and gravel. So do we have a motion in support of the special permits for kennels?
I would make a motion that we bring that to our hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Last one is acceptance of Drumlin Hill Road, Ledgewood Circle, and Fieldstone Way. What is the name of this development?
Northwoods.
Northwoods, yeah. So
That's pretty straightforward.
Fred's looked it all over and it's all
Yeah,
set?
Fred's, basically, next week, Chuck Black will be going to the Board of Selectmen hearing to have them place it on the warrant. He's gonna ask for them to place it on the warrant. So that's sort of his next step.
So this is the winter it's supposed to go through?
Yes.
So, if, when, like, is there, so like March, if they determine, oh, there was some issue or something, you know, how does that work? If there were,
The DPW would be inspecting these before the town meeting, and if there were any issue, he
they
would...
could pull
You'd have
it,
to address it probably.
they could pull it.
There's some money being held.
Yeah, and part of the bond's being held. Actually, Chuck Black called me today about that. So I got a check this week for the $4,000 for the pedestrian mobility fund.
Good.
It'll be cleared next week, and he wanted me to ask the board if the bond could then be reduced another 50%, but then I went back and looked at our meeting minutes from when he was here last time, and I think we agreed that he would have to do the $4,000 as well as the street acceptance fee. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. I think we still need to hold it, but
So how much is the street
Right.
acceptance fee? That was like-
well, he's supposed to calculate it and get it
Okay. so
and let
we're
us
still
know.
waiting
So
on
I'm
that
still waiting
because-
on that.
$3 a linear foot,
Or-
minimum of $16.50.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, technically, if you read the subdivision rules and regs, we're supposed to hold 10% until street acceptance anyway, but I think there was a verbal agreement that he could reduce it to 5.
So I just say, let's wait till he gets all his payments.
Okay.
I mean, he's had, we discussed that, a month or more ago?
Yeah. And the other interesting thing too is when I handed over the check and talked to Julie about it, there is no pedestrian mobility fund, and it's actually against the law to create one. So it goes into the general fund. So I don't quite know how that
That's
works.
scary.
Because if you look at the approval for the definitive subdivision, when we talk about how, he was giving us the $4,000 in lieu of the sidewalk, we talk about a pedestrian mobility fund and how it would be placed in that.
Mhm.
But that doesn't exist, and it will never exist.
So how does that get
That's-
marked?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm not quite sure how it gets
I would ask
distinguished
Dawn that.
from the rest of the money, Julie was saying something about how it would get appropriated at town meeting if needed. But I'm so new to that process, I'm not quite sure what that means.
So, yeah, so let the mobility committee know that
Okay.
the check has been accepted
Yep,
and that it's gone into the general fund.
okay,
And that if they want to use the money, they're gonna have to come to town meeting, it sounds like.
yeah.
Which is, could be a long wait.
But I would make the motion that we bring these 3 articles to our hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Yeah. So this thing in here about the town caucus, believe
All right.
Doug might be a tough one this way. The last time, I remember him talking about it, he was saying pretty much no way am I running again. Will you change your mind about that?
I've already got the sign on my front yard.
Twist his arm.
No, I'm not running again. Thank you.
Eric, you've been on for like 2 months.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely
You want
running.
to try to run again? Yeah.
So you can run for the 5
Well,
years.
that's what I was gonna say. I should probably do that. I don't know.
Yeah, there'll be 2 different, at the town caucus, there'll be 2 different
Yeah.
votes for, one will be a 5-year, one will be a 1-year. And if you intend to stay, on the board and want to, it would make sense to run for the
So so everybody who's up has to go back to the caucus, right? Every time, yeah.
So
So
that
what I'm
1 year
thinking
is,
if we work on him, we can get him to run for 1 more year.
Yeah, you take the 1 year.
Just have to keep giving him 1 year sentences.
Way out, it should kind of.
I did that 2 years ago. I took the 2-year, right?
it's true, he did say that. Yeah, did we switch?
It's amazing how 2 years goes by, huh?
Oh my god.
Hey, if you wanted to do that, I would go 5-year and you can go 1 year.
No, I'm sure there will be some new blood that'll be looking to try and avoid.
So the 1 year is Mark Goutreau's remaining year. Okay, it's a 5-year term.
But you just want to be sure that someone
Nominate your
is there to nominate you.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that one of these guys,
Do I need a second? Or
no, somebody will say it. But it's just good to have somebody there, especially
Yeah.
in light of, wanting to clarify that you want to run for the 5-year.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be very clear about that. They'll say, we have a 1-year, we have a 5-year, nominations for the 5-year.
I just hope I have a campaign like you versus John.
I'm gonna do
So
the
Doug,
Trump.
are you gonna go
Watch
for a
out.
town moderator then?
I'm going for president of Bolton Little League, which is what I am now. And I'm on the board of directors of the Builders Association of Greater Boston. And got plenty to keep me busy.
Run out of
Affordable
seconds.
Housing Trust?
Affordable Housing Trust,
That must take tons of time.
not much.
Well, you guys are gonna be getting a windfall, right? From Century Mill. I mean, it's
No,
time
we
to
don't
start
care.
planning something,
We
right?
do have to start
Are you
planning.
guys eyeing lots? I mean,
Well, the bigger issue is that we have lots, we have another lot that, what we really need to do is come up with a way to sell the lots to raise capital, to use the capital to do something. Because one-off individual, trying to do the Habitat for Humanity one-off thing is pretty tough in a town like this.
The last one already got voted down, right?
Well, we wanted to turn it into a duplex to make it more cost effective.
I sent you those pictures of the duplex, and it's actually in Sudbury. It's
Where?
so what's that light there, and then the cemetery. After
On
Maynard.
27th?
Maynard. There's the it's painful, but there's the track, and there's like the YMCA.
Yep, so take a right. or go-
If you just
go
keep
straight.
going straight,
117.
there in you get into Sudbury miraculously, and there are two family houses, but they look like, the driveway's on one side with 4 parking spots, one
Mhm.
two straight ahead, 2 to the side, and then there's a side doorway and a front doorway, so it just looks like
Sure,
a
okay, I'll check
one-family
that.
house. There are 2 of them, one's on the left side and one's on the right. But
No,
those are,
you definitely can do it that way. You can design it in a way that it doesn't look like a two-family, but there's just,
Just don't call the duplex and just the town wants it.
I
That's
just,
called a
I've
duplex.
tried it twice, and both
Yeah,
times it
but-
was an incredible outroar. among
but
the
like,
neighborhood.
within a development is different than like the corner.
Correct.
The corner
I
of
think so.
Waddington Manor where they just built a house, or, who's that developer who's building, he came in,
Bob and
Oh,
Robert.
Pace.
Kylie?
Pace.
the Pace.
Yeah, Pace.
So they're building those houses,
Yeah.
on that. They did that swap, somehow they got the land from that guy, but, those type of lots where it's not a drive-in development, but they're just on an existing road, don't you think that would work?
You would think so, wouldn't you?
We've tried it twice in 2 different places in town, and both times there was
Is
a
Golden Run
huge
that time or
uproar
something?
among the neighborhood.
Is it Golden Run?
Yeah, Hope Farm, the end of Gold Run. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
And, there's just still this perception of, duplex is not Bolton, and that would mean that, we'd be getting, lower our property values and all this other thing, which, I just don't think is true, but that's what a lot of people feel. So it's difficult to find a way to do it in Bolton. I think that the right way, the better way that might work is something like we were talking about with the Smith property, where there would be a clustering of houses that would have a higher density and have a percentage of them be affordable.
Would that require the cottage overlay to do that?
It could be. Or it
They
could
know
be, or
scare-
it could be a 40B, traditional 40B. Or it could be, well, to do more than what's allowed there would require some overlay. Because what's allowed there,
It's 8 acres.
8 acres is 4 houses, right? So if you want to do more than 4 houses, which I think you would need to do there, it's going to require some different zoning than what we have currently. Could be cottage overlay, could be a 40B.
So a duplex isn't allowed in a residential lot, so it has to,
Strangely, an in-law
Not
apartment
involved.
would be, and there's really not a heck of a lot of difference between them.
We tried that too. We tried to change the bylaw to allow for duplexes in Bolton, and that was voted down too.
Duplexes aren't allowed. That means a 2-family house, is that what it is?
Yeah, well, that's the whole issue of the stable bylaw, is you're not allowed to have more than 1 residence on a piece of property.
Okay, yeah.
Which is not to say that we don't have some multi-unit houses that are grandfathered, or multi-unit apartment houses.
My house
But you
was
can't go out and
3
build
apartments
as a
when I bought
project.
it.
Really?
yeah, some of the houses on Main
It's
Street
divided
are,
up into 3. Yeah.
some of the houses on Main Street are divided up, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're allowed to have apartments.
Every house is allowed to have 1 apartment.
Yeah.
We have several
But
that
that's
have
not
three or
considered-
more.
but that's not considered a duplex?
You need to live in it.
It's supposed to be.
That's not considered a duplex? An apartment?
Yeah,
What's the
there
difference?
definitely are some apartment buildings on Main Street.
I think more likely they're apartment
Not
buildings,
Owner
Yeah.
occupied.
which are not allowed either, but they're
Apartment buildings.
grandfathered as
Oh,
pre-existing.
That White House between the Cracker
Just
Barrel.
curiosity, do we have any prohibitions on mobile homes in town. If
I don't know.
If there's
I don't think
something, perception against
Mobile home
duplexes.
overlay.
No, that's not
I'm
what I'm
guessing-
suggesting.
I'm
What
guessing
I'm
he-
suggesting
yeah.
is if there's a perception against duplexes, but will allow mobile homes, wouldn't our priorities be perhaps,
Well, the Regency used to be mobile homes, that's what.
yeah, well, that's definitely stepped up.
That was a pre-existing, non-conforming property.
So are you still, is the Housing Trust
Sorry about that.
in any type of conversation with the Land Trust about the Smith property?
We haven't been of recent. I think they're waiting to see what happens with grants and things like that.
So I thought I heard development was coming back up related to that parcel,
I haven't heard anything, but
residential.
let me know if you do.
Can you check in with them?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Good.
Just a couple more things, actually. I'm supposed to be the representative for Magic, but I need you guys to appoint me. So can you do that?
I would make a motion
to
that
appoint
we...
you for our representative to Magic.
Just a second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
What is magic?
What is Magic?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination.
So it is a regional planning arm of the MAPC. The MAPC is the sort of all of Eastern Mass. We are the far west outlier of MAPC. There's a central group, and MAPC has about 5 different subgroups, of which Magic is the one that Bolton falls in. It includes towns like Hudson, Stowe, Bedford, Littleton, I don't know, what other towns?
So are we all along
I don't remember.
495?
Yeah, it's sort of the western towns. So they're sort of, they're
They're different regions.
mid-sized, planning groups to bring the towns together to talk about things. It's great.
Anything else there?
I actually did it for a couple of years.
We just need to set our public hearing date. I mean, we can right now, right? Since we're happy
Well,
with the bylaws or the articles?
I
Or
think
no?
you need to do it, if we're going to include the overlay, 2 weeks from when that's final. 2 weeks from when you can notice that that's final. So if they're working on that next week,
Mhm. We couldn't schedule it for like end of March or something, and that way there's plenty of time for me to post in 2 weeks, or you can do it next time, it doesn't matter.
right on
Do
it.
it at the next meeting?
Yeah,
Okay,
do that.
that sounds good.
Next meeting is when?
The 26th.
Okay, yeah. So if you're ready at that point, we could say do it, and you could post, you could, put it in the newspapers right away.
Right.
That'd be the second one in March.
Mhm.
Good. Anything else?
That's it.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second?
All in favor? Aye.
All right?